Welcome into the Scoop podcast on Inside Carolina Podcast Network. This is the Scoop, UNC's premier football recruiting podcast. I'm your host, Ross Martin. As always, we're joined by Don Callahan. We were recording this Tuesday. It is National Sign Day by the time you're listening to this. Welcome to National Sign Day or Early Sign Day 2021. We're pumped to have you listening. We got a big show for you. Hope you're excited. We are definitely excited. Don, what's up, man?
I am just excited to get all this stuff done and over with, be done with all the tying up of loose ends in preparation for this class. And I guess just moving on to the next one, really.
There you go. Always bringing the great content for us there. This is beautiful. All right, Don, how many classes is this for you? I mean, this is just another landmark. The 2021 class pretty much is going to be in the book after Wednesday's signing day.
Yeah, so I think my first class was 2003 with Inside Carolina.
Okay.
So that's what, 14? No, 17. Yeah. Or is that 18?
I think if it was 13, then it would be 18. I'm not a big math guy. Well, all right, let's do it. You said three?
Yeah, 3,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. How many was that?
I don't know. I lost count.
It
was a lot. It's been a lot.
Yeah. So how does this one compare? Let's get some general takeaways. Actually, first, let's go ahead and let you know what's going on with this podcast. We're going to do a little intro here, 15, 20 minutes, talking about the class, just Don and I. We then have two really good interviews set up. We talked to Steve Wiltfong, the director of 24/7 Sports recruiting. We have a good 15, 20-minute interview with him that's going to come up next. And then following that, we talked to Barton Simmons, 24/7 Sports director of scouting, for 15, 20 minutes as well. I thought they were awesome interviews. Both provide kind of a different perspective on the class. We asked kind of different questions, a couple same questions to kind of see what their opinion was on UNC's players, national perspective of the 2021 class, recruiting in general. We got Barton on a little bit of his job as the guy who ranks the players. So really good interview. So make sure you stay on and listen to Steve Wiltfong and Barton Simmons after Don and I are done. Don?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I thought they gave really good perspective. I liked how he dipped a little bit into what Barton actually does, because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding on certain things, and he does a good job of explaining a little bit. But I think we can get into a little bit more detail on a upcoming podcast at some point. But some really good perspectives, at least from a national side, on some of North Carolina's commits from both Steve and Barton. So yeah, I mean, it's great information if you want to know about this class.
For sure. And look, I forgot to say this, but you can rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, Inside Carolina Podcast. Make sure you do that. Giant T-shirt and GiantT-shirt.com are our sponsors. Definitely need to mention then. And Don, you can watch Don on YouTube. He is looking in a different direction. He's not looking at the camera. He's looking away. I don't know why he's doing that.
Oh, I think I moved my camera since last time.
Yeah.
I could fix it, but then I don't know if it makes.
That's all right. It'll be fine. He's been looking away the whole time. There he goes. All right, Don, let's get into this 2021 class. First, what's your general takeaway? I mean, this is one of the better classes in UNC history during the internet era. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so now you have me all subconscious about my freaking – I'm just putting it back to where it was. General thoughts on this class. Really good class. Obviously in-state heavy, which made my job a whole lot easier, especially since we were operating within a pandemic. We really had a good grasp on what this class was going to look like really early on. I mean, I think that I probably need to go back and look at a mock class or so early on, but I would imagine, and this is not because I am so great at predicting the future, but I just think that North Carolina zeroed in so well on who they wanted in this class, and had such a great rapport with a lot of those guys very early on that it was really easy to predict this class. There were a couple of situations. You know, we had Jarrett Wilson, who was committed then decommitted, and North Carolina had to fill that void eventually with Diego Pounds, and the Diego Pounds saga was kind of interesting. We also had that last outside linebacker / edge rusher position, which initially North Carolina wanted it to be Zaire Patterson. He ended up going to Clemson, and then it was going to be George Wilson. He ended up going to South Carolina, and then Travion Stevenson, who UNC liked before George Wilson. They offered George Wilson. He became back interested in North Carolina, and he was committed to Pitt. So UNC gets him. And the crazy thing is that George Wilson eventually decommits from South Carolina and wants to get back in with North Carolina. And North Carolina said, no, thank you.
All right, God, you got to look at the camera here. If we're going to do this YouTube thing, you can't look away.
Ross, do not scold me.
I mean, it's kind of weird. We're doing a video interview and you're looking at the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's just because of where the camera is.
Okay, well, switch it up.
Oh my God. But if I
look at the camera, I don't know how hard it is to look at the camera. There you go. You're a big boy. You can do it.
Yeah, but then it's like, see, we're wasting all this time messing with this stuff.
This is bad radio.
This is bad radio. Just don't. I'll try.
I don't get why you can't look at it. There you go. Was that hard?
Because I'm also looking at information.
Well, look at me. All right, there we go. So
I'm looking. All right, go ahead.
So wait, let's go back to that George Wilson thing. So he was leaning towards, after decommitting from South Carolina, he's leaning towards Auburn. Auburn fired the coach. Now I'm seeing a lot of crystal balls for Florida State.
Yeah. So when he initially decommitted from South Carolina, from what I gather from sources, is that North Carolina was a school that he initially looked at. And then North Carolina eventually kind of decided, hey, we are comfortable with where we're at this class, and, passed them by. And then Auburn, now would have Auburn passed North Carolina after a couple of weeks? I mean, that's certainly possible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just don't, I think the best way to put it is North Carolina this second time around said, no, thank you.
Gotcha. Well, let's move on to people who are going to be in this class.
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of how it went, and you were kind of leaning toward this take that it was all done, by the summer and even kind of before then. I mean, there was no drama this fall, really. When did Diego Pounds committed in September 25th? That's the last commitment, right?
No, Bryce Nesbitt committed.
That's right. Sorry,
December 1st.
Okay, so you had Bryce Nesbitt, who they kind of targeted all along, and then Diego Pounds were the only ones that would happen during the football season, and much of that was because nationally there just weren't a lot of visits and movement because there are no visits, no official visits. They didn't get to bring in maybe that elite guy from out of state, and vice versa. A lot of these guys didn't get to visit other schools. I think some of these players maybe would have made maybe one or two other visits before announcing, but everything was kind of sped up because UNC targeted so many people, and they locked down this class really April, May, June. In my perspective, is that kind of how you saw it happen?
Yeah, I mean, before the pandemic hit, North Carolina had 9 commitments, which ultimately ended up being half of their commitment list,
Mm-hmm.
their signee list. And I really believe, UNC was in it with a lot of these other guys during the pandemic, but I think the pandemic really helped kind of because in a lot of those situations, North Carolina was the only school that these kids visited.
Why are you laughing?
I don't know if you can hear it. My phone has been going off and I can't reach it. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're messing up a lot on the tech side today.
This is awful. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's charging the opposite side, and I can't obviously get up.
Live podcasting. All right, continue.
All right. So North Carolina was one of the schools that a lot of these kids visited,
Mm-hmm.
and some of these other schools that they wanted to visit. J.J. Jones, for example, wanted to visit Georgia, and I mean, who knows how much interest Georgia had in him, but that visit never happened. Bryson Nesbitt wanted to visit UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it probably didn't matter, but he did make a quarantine visit. The visit experience, I'm sure, would have been better had he been able to hang out with the coaches and even officially visit. But the fact that he didn't, you got to look at it as it helped North Carolina. And so really, I mean, obviously UNC had some obstacles and had to adjust how they approach things.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I think the pandemic, they were one of the schools that kind of benefited from some of the aspects that came out of the pandemic from a recruiting standpoint, obviously not from a health standpoint and all that.
For sure. I mean, they had so many good in-state players, and that's not going to be the case every year. It just kind of the stars align in terms of them going and targeting the very talented in-state players for this cycle, and a pandemic striking that did not allow a lot of these guys to go make other visits. It had to stay local, and they were already in with these guys, and they already had most of them committed kind of March, April, May. And to go by the numbers here, UNC's class right now, we're recording on Tuesday afternoon, number 12 in the nation, number 3 in the ACC. They have 18 signees, 1 5-star, 11 4-stars. 15 of the commits are in state, and 3 are out of state. And the out of state ones, you have a guy from Tennessee, so it's a border state, Eli Sutton from Brentwood Academy in Brentwood, Tennessee. You have J.J. Jones from Myrtle Beach, right down the road, not too far of a drive. J.J. Jones, the talented wide receiver. And lastly, Travion Stevenson out of Hampton, Virginia, which we've kind of talked about multiple times, how that area of the Tidewater, VA area is UNC is one of the closer colleges when you compare it to Virginia Tech or Virginia. NC State, UNC, Duke are all relatively close to the Hampton Roads kind of area, Roanoke Rapids.
Yeah. So the only I guess outliner with all of that is Eli Sutton.
Yeah.
Because I mean Myrtle Beach. I mean most people in North Carolina go to vacation Myrtle Beach. So it's not that far. Virginia Beach, we talked about a bunch, is basically closer. North Carolina's closer to Virginia Beach than even the major schools in the state of Virginia. So, and then obviously the 15 in-state guys, which we're including Kobe Paysour, even though he spent his senior season at Gaffney so that he can play. So I mean, it helped North Carolina's cause an awful lot that it really didn't have to venture very far for any of these recruits.
Hey, where did your boy Yusuf Mugabil go? Florida. Okay, cool. Interesting.
Which is, you want to talk about, that's kind of the opposite of what we're talking about with J.J. Jones and with Travion Stevenson, is that, Yusuf is actually in North Carolina, but you kind of feel like he's not, you know what I mean? Because he's so far away. And I remember when I went by his school, I tried to figure out what's the best way so I'm not like traveling all day and night just to get to this kid's school in the middle of nowhere. And what ended up working out best was when I went to the Atlanta opening regional.
Yeah, it's close to Atlanta.
Yeah, it's like only like a couple hours from Atlanta. I hit it up on my way back home, and it was only like added like a couple hours to my trip. So it's just kind of crazy.
That's a
comparison.
That's a real interesting part of the state. I mean, I worked out there for 2 summers in the Anahalo.
Where at?
I worked in the Anahalo River as a rafting guide, and it's a couple, 30 minutes, 45 minutes from Murphy, maybe a little farther. But I mean, that's just so far west. I mean, far west of Asheville. I mean, it's hard to get there. And then it's close to Georgia, it's close to Tennessee, all that stuff. And Atlanta's kind of northern Georgia, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get, first of all, if you're listening to this and you're listening in the morning on Wednesday morning, signing day, we are live streaming from Don's house at
the Man Tower.
The Man Tower.
Not just Don's house, not Don's living room, not Don's pantry, the Man Tower.
6:45 a.m. If you're listening in the morning, if you're listening at some point when you wake up, if you have a chance, go to Inside Carolina, find the live stream link. It's gonna be on Inside Carolina's YouTube, and you can watch on both our message boards. And we're gonna kind of just hang out for 3-4 hours as the national letter of intents roll in for UNC, and get all that set, and kind of be working and coordinating stuff. And Don will be giving live analysis, and we'll have live chatter live from the Man Tower with the Inside Carolina 2021 signing day live stream. Don, thoughts?
I'm actually more curious to get your thoughts because you're the one who's all right. So let me get my thoughts. I'm excited because I think it's going to be a cool little thing. It really doesn't add too much to our workload because we're going to be working while the stream's going on and just kind of adjusting. And I'm kind of excited because I don't know what to expect, and the fans are going to get a chance to kind of see what happens. We have fans. We do have fans. What are your thoughts? Are you anxious?
I just want
scared?
to make sure we're all safe. Priority
That's right.
one,
That's
safety.
A big part of it. So a lot of it. So just in case we have some people who are trying to catch us being hypocrites, there was a lot of COVID protocols put in place to the Man Tower in order for this to work in a pandemic.
Yeah, I've been quarantining. I've been isolated for 2 weeks now, so I could
So
provide a
have I. We have
4-hour live stream.
plexiglass. We're going to have masks, although we won't have masks on while we're talking, but we will have plexiglass between us so that Ross doesn't give me COVID or STDs.
Jeez Louise, man. All right, enough of that. So if you do want to watch the live stream, if you're listening to this in time, head to Inside Carolina, head to the message boards, click the link, get the live stream cooking. You can have it up while you make breakfast. We'll try to be safe for your kids in terms of the language we'll be using, and you can fire it up at work or whatever, have in the background. But it's a cool experiment. It's not, yeah, we're not really going much out of our way. A couple tech things we had to work out, but hopefully it's gonna be fun. Okay, let's get a little bit more into this class, Don. And we've talked about so much over the last year. Let's wrap it up, and then we'll go straight to the two interviews, Steve Wiltfong and Barton Simmons. All right, Don, where do you think UNC got better in this class in terms of its roster building and I guess the program and talent on the roster?
The front seven on defense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have Keyshawn Silver, 5-star guy, a guy who I think that if he does what he needs to do and develop the way I expect him to be a first-round draft pick. Ra Dilworth, who I think is going to be a great defensive weapon for Jay Bateman. Power Eccles is just your stereotypical Mike linebacker. If you think about just whatever vision you have of a Mike linebacker, just knocking the snot out of offensive players, the cold, that sort of thing. That's Power Eccles right there. I mean, he's been Vance High School has had the best defense in the state of North Carolina the past couple of seasons. They won the state championship, played for it the year before that, and Power Eccles was the best player and the leader of that defense, if that says anything. You also have Javari Ritzie, who similarly to Keyshawn Silver has all the tools. We actually ran an inside the commitment on Javari Ritzie earlier this week, which is fascinating as far as just his background and everything. But one of the interesting things that I didn't know was that this kid was a quarterback up until his sophomore season. So he's only played 2 years of defensive line. So obviously he has a lot to learn, and that just kind of speaks to what sort of ceiling he has. DeAndre Boykins, another kid who just a pure athlete who I think will be molded to be a great player for North Carolina, likely as a nickel. So that's not technically the front seven, but it kind of sort of is.
Gabe Stevens will kind of be that outside linebacker defensive end,
Gabe
right?
Stevens, the outside linebacker rush guy. We were talking earlier about Travion Stevenson, but Gabe Stevens was a guy really that North Carolina wanted heavily for that the outside linebacker position, and got him very, very early on. So we don't talk about him a whole lot. But, I mean, he's another kid who's a super athlete, actually played corner for a little bit, but has obviously grown into, a hybrid outside linebacker defensive end. So he fits perfectly. Just a lot of really good players in that front seven from North Carolina. But really throughout, UNC got better. Everyone's going to say that today. Every school is going to say that today. But I really think North Carolina got better a lot in a lot of different positions.
Yeah, front seven of what strikes out to me, stands out to me. With Ritzie and Silver, I think you add just two elite, high level. I don't know if you'd call Ritzie elite, but really impact players. If you combine that with what UNC did in 2020 with Kedrick Bingley-Jones, Miles Murphy, who has become a kind of rotational player as a freshman, Desmond Evans, who's been on the edge, Clyde Pender, who's getting playing time now. Am I missing anybody from that class? I think that's it. But, a stacked defensive front, you add Ritzie and Silver, then you're looking at, the 2022 season is going to be that's what kind of the defense is going to be, I think, elite. And then, of course, Dilworth and Eccles. And I think secondary-wise, too, what they did last year in the secondary with Grimes and Conley.
And Grimes is supposed to be part of this class.
Exactly. We don't talk about that
but
enough
you've
either.
heard about that 1,000 times over the weekend watching the game.
Yeah.
Because that's all they talked about was just how he's supposed to be a high school senior and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, for sure. So, talking to Domatavius Nash, man, I like what he can bring as well. And then I think the second area they got really good is the skill positions on offense. And we're covering like a lot of things. That's pretty much everything. But Drake May, he's an elite quarterback. We throw that word elite around a lot, but he's a top 60 guy in the nation, one of the best quarterbacks in the class. Or here, Wiltfong talk about Drake May a lot. And then, I think Gavin Blackwell, I know you're high on him. And then J.J. Jones, Bryson Nesbitt, and Kobe Passor. I mean, you have 4 pass catchers there, all with good length, speed, and athleticism.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of J.J. Jones. Also, we did a game evaluation of him earlier this week. Also, so and he has 2 fabulous plays that kind of just shows what he could potentially do. One where he broke a tackle, put a juke move on a defender, and then ran like 50 yards down the field for a touchdown. Another where he made this spectacular grab where it was almost one-handed and knocked it down to himself and used his concentration to still make the grab even though he had a defender draped on him. So I agree. J.J. Jones is going to be a great player, and as you mentioned, I'm a big fan of Gavin. Definitely going to be a yapper out there, which I always love.
You love that he talks shit. Okay, and I mean, you've talked high about Caleb Hood, and you'll hear, not to give away too much, but Steve and Barton both have some strong comments about Hood and what he could potentially do, and we assume that he's going to play running back. So you have Hood coming in at running back, and you have Kamara Edmonds, another kind of forgotten player in my mind, who's a 4-star guy. There's so many 4-stars, we forget about him. Whereas in previous classes, the 4-stars are kind of rare. So
you lose track.
4-stars everywhere. One weakness I would say in this class is just Eli Sutton is the offensive tackle along with Diego Pounds. Those guys are good ranking wise. I always want them to oversign, and I think UNC needs to start getting elite offensive linemen, top 100 kids that can be difference makers. I think that's where UNC is kind of lacked in the last couple of years. Your thoughts there? Anything?
Yeah, I agree with you. Both of those guys had the physical tools, but are more finesse sort of blockers at this stage of their careers. And you kind of have to have a little bit of a meanness. And I'm not sure that neither one of them have shown that in their film to date. And maybe that changes in college where they have to kind of fight a little bit for playing time. Whereas in high school, they basically, Pounds has only played a couple of years also. And so basically with his size, he just shows up and he's the best player on the field most Friday nights. It's obviously going to be different in college.
For sure. All right, Don, that's all I got. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about with this class? I mean, we've covered it, constantly for the last year, I felt. And we've touched on every commitment pretty much. We touched on the developments class, and really sitting here on Tuesday, looking ahead to Wednesday, there's really no drama. There's no surprises.
Well, we hope there's no drama.
Yeah. Well,
there's no expected drama.
Well,
so
yeah,
if there is, we might have to do an emergency podcast.
Yeah. Last year with Clyde Pender, like kind of going into the week and that day, we were waiting for Clyde Pender to kind of be fully committed, and that lasted throughout signing day, right?
Yes. That was a little weird situation because of Florida kind of trying to steal him at the last minute, and then once North Carolina kind of convinced him to sign, then he played some games with when he was going to send it in, and then he said that he had some sort of, he showed up to school late, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because this is one of the biggest school days of his entire career because you're signing your letter of intent, but you're going to show up to school late, and then he had to take a test. And then he told me he didn't send in his letter of intent, and it turns out that he actually did. So he lied to me, and it just this whole mess.
Never lied to Donnie Scoops.
No.
And you had Tim Brewster just tweeting through it.
Yes, Tim Brewster.
So yeah, usually there's some drama.
Do you miss Tim Brewster?
Oh yeah, I love the guy. I love.
You miss his tweets?
I miss his tweets.
Are okay. Yeah,
his tweets are fire. Sitting next to Mac Brown going up I-85, just smiling ear to ear. Like what? Changing a tire on 85, heading to Charlotte.
We have the answers to the test, but not the questions.
Yeah, just like. Yeah, so funny. I like Tim Brewster. I'm a family friend of the Brewsters. Let's see what else. I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, with drama. Like usually in the past, having covered a couple signing days myself, you have maybe an announcement going on where one guy's picking between 3 schools. So that kind of draws. You have the announcement at 2:00, and it kind of draws a lot of traffic, and you're kind of covering the announcement. That was that receiver that Gunnar Brewer was going for. I remember had a big announcement. He picked Auburn. Remember that wide receiver like 4 years ago?
Was it
Maybe 5 years ago, honestly.
God, I'm trying to think of who it was.
Yeah.
Um,
But you have things like that where
yeah, well,
players.
so I think it's important.
There's none of that this year as
Well,
well.
yeah, for North Carolina, there's not, but I think it's important to mention that it is going on at other programs,
Mm-hmm.
though. They're dealing with that. And I think some of that, too, is just how Mac Brown operates, or his preference for how he attacks recruiting. And he did this at Texas, too. He wants his class wrapped up as soon as possible. And I've had a lot of different sources kind of mention it's kind of known, but just the extent of it and just the pressure there is to get the class wrapped up so quickly so that it can move on to the next one. That's why I think we're going to see, a couple commitments pretty quickly right after signing day.
Yeah, and it's good for UNC. There's no stress. They had a coach last week. I mean, some people are going through coaching changes. Some people are preparing for championship games, and UNC is certainly focused now on 22 and 23. I mean, this class has been locked up now after the Bryson Nesbitt commitment, but really locked up, I think, since the summer, just cementing those commitments and kind of moving on. And then you get offers out for 22, 23. And, once the whole COVID thing kind of wraps up here, you'll get a completely different change in how recruiting is done based on what happened in the last 9 months. All right, Don, anything else, big boy?
No, I'm ready to get to these interviews. I think that the listeners are going to enjoy it.
How excited are you to hang out with me tomorrow?
I am so excited. I am so excited. Ross is actually going to spend the night. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, I'm gonna sleep in a mask.
Yes.
All right, well, a big spread tomorrow. I'm gonna get some donuts. Gonna get some Bojangles. We're gonna have. It's gonna be the most time I've spent straight with Don Callahan.
The other times weren't straight. The other times were what?
Like straight consecutive hours. Consecutive
okay.
hours. Yeah.
All right. I'm just wondering if there's some other times that we hung out that I don't remember.
Jeez, cut this, John. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. That's it for our portion. Next up, first, Giant T-shirt. Make sure you get Giant T-shirts holiday season. Use the promo code on InsideCarolina.com on the premium message boards. Get yourself some sweatshirts, Christmas gifts. I actually need to go there. I might go there today, actually. I need to get my niece and nephew something from Giant T-shirts. So I'm going to go there and get some stuff out. Christmas shopping, I hate it. And everything's like backlog now. Like I'm trying to get stuff delivered. And it's like, this is not going to arrive until January 5th. I'm like, well, that's not going to work. Christ was born on the 25th.
You need to start sooner.
Yeah. I'm not a huge gift guy, not a material possessions guy. I know you are. Oh, I got to tell you. All right. So Giant T-shirt, go Giant T-shirt, get all your stuff. I mean, it's awesome. Like it's a one-stop shop for all UNC stuff. And you can't have enough UNC gear, anything you need, stuff for the kitchen, stuff for the house, posters, pictures, accessories, gear, gloves, hats. I might go get a toboggan. Call me crazy. Sweatshirts. All right. And before we go, Don, I got a text from a buddy who is obviously on Inside Carolina reading about the live stream. And I'm going to read every text he just sent me. He's a big fan of the podcast. His name is Wayne House. He said, sorry, you and Don, man tower tomorrow, 2 liters of Mountain Dew, beef jerky, text flying, info, scoop. Don, definitely an Android guy. Makes you think.
Not sure what all that means.
Yeah. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of the podcast. We have Steve Wiltfong and Barton Simmons. We appreciate you listening to Scoop. Happy National Signing Day. And we're back now with 24/7 Sports' Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. What's going on, Steve?
Gentlemen, man, we are looking dope for this podcast. I'm so excited to be on with y'all because what a time to talk about North Carolina recruiting. Number 12 class nationally a year after getting number 13, and that's with your class jewel already playing in the secondary for North Carolina in a season that really doesn't count for him. He should still be in high school in Tony Grimes, but it does count for his development. But I want to count him in this class because it would be a top 10 class. I wish we could, but them's the rules. Number 2 in the ACC. How about y'all? How you guys doing?
Yeah. Hey, Don, that's the kind of energy I want you to bring to this podcast. That's how you intro.
It's going to be tough to match.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough to match. Steve is definitely slamming down those power drinks, those energy drinks.
I'm just smoothies, guys. You put the mixed berries in, obviously, and get the banana. You got spinach. You got cucumber.
Man,
depending on if we have them, some chia seeds for the fiber and added protein. and that's your base.
I'm not sure Don knows any of those ingredients. All right.
Hey, I told you before, I'm all about the chia seeds. Throw them in my oatmeal.
There we go. All right, let's get right into it. We're bringing on Steve on Sign Day, the Sign Day podcast, to talk about UNC's 2021 class. We're gonna get through a bunch of questions here, get kind of a national perspective, and also break down particular players that we think can have a big impact in Chapel Hill. Let's get right into it. Don, you want to take the first question here?
Yeah, I was actually first going to ask Steve about his general takeaways, but I think he did a really good job covering all that when he first came on. So I'll just go right into it. I want to know, when you're looking at North Carolina's commitment list or signee class, really, the 18 guys, who do you think is going to be the best college player, and who do you think is going to be the best NFL player among those 18?
All right, man. Well, so I think Drake May is going to be the best college player. I think he's going to be the best NFL player.
Wow.
Okay.
I think he's arguably the top quarterback in this class, and it stinks that he didn't get to play his senior year.
Mm-hmm.
What a year J.J. Jones had, by the way. That's all you got, right? Because this class is so in-state heavy. But
I think Eli Sutton played too, right, Don?
yeah.
Yeah, and Kobe Pacor, he transferred across the state so he could play for Gaffney.
Sure. I was just being, exaggerative with the lack of playing in this class and your updates from the Friday Night Lights or whatever.
Yeah.
Not much to write about. But
No, it was not.
I saw Drake May at the Quarterback Collective event at the end of summer with my own eyes, working with guys like Sage Rosenfels, and I thought he was outstanding in that setting. Just has a tremendous physical traits and abilities, but yet I still think he's developing in that fashion. Just a smooth athlete, a good basketball player. Had an outstanding junior year. Would have had a even better senior year at Myers Park. And North Carolina, when you look at this football team, it's been an upgrade in every position room under Mac Brown and his staff, but particularly at quarterback and on the defensive front, flipping Sam Howell. It's spatula season a couple of years ago. And getting Sam Howell away from the Knowles was as crucial a pickup that cycle, and it's certainly paid dividends on the field as y'all have a big top 25 matchup this weekend against Miami. But and then getting Jacoby Criswell, I forget if that was a flip special, but was that a flip?
No, he was going to get Arkansas and Auburn.
People tried to flip him, and
yeah.
For you, you're not special.
Yeah.
Worthy, and then they have Drake May coming behind. So I think he's terrific. But man, I mean, you could really point to a lot of guys in this class that are going to be special, and they're going to need them next year. A lot of these guys are going to play early, and it's going to be a youth movement. And with that, you're going to have a talented football team that might drop a game or two that they're not supposed to, like Florida State this year. But I think in the long run, once this culture is completely in order and the talent is completely injected into the program, we're going to see North Carolina playing for games that really matter week in and week out.
So we'll stay on quarterbacks here for a second. How is Drake May different than Sam Howell coming out of high school in terms of, obviously physically they're different, but in terms of just like as a quarterback, throwing, accuracy, that kind of stuff? How are they different?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, like Drake May is just so much bigger than Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Sam's thick though, and Sam's like built like a catcher, like Kyle Schwarber almost, but maybe a little taller than Schwarber. But Sam Howell was a really good high school baseball player. He's a multi-sport kid that as a senior had an unbelievable senior season. And so the data shows that quarterbacks getting drafted high had outstanding juniors and senior years of high school football, and that's box checked for both Sam Howell and Drake May. Drake May obviously again only had the junior year, but he would have been prolific. You start to kind of forget something like Sam Howell. I saw him live a bunch, saw him at the Adidas 7-on-7 national championship, saw him at the Elite 11 finals. He was just always in the upper echelon of the performers. Saw him at the All-America Bowl for a week, just a gritty, tough, hard-nosed competitor in addition to the traits he brings to the field. I think see the game slowly, particularly did on the high school level. The high school defenses were in slow motion, and they were able to basically do what they want to do. For Sam Howell, he was able to slow it down quickly in Chapel Hill. We'll see if Drake May has that capability, especially without all those snaps this year. Now, on the flip side, Drake May is not going to be counted on early. So how much valuable snaps can he get as your scout team quarterback going against what should be a pretty damn talented young defense in practice, getting them prepared for whoever their opponent is in the weeks to come? And I know Drake's going to come in with the mindset to compete and win the job, but you got to get him a ton of scout team snaps to make up for the senior year, to get him the feel of the game and all of that, in my opinion, next year. So when his number's called, he's ready to go.
All right, well, let's go to kind of the opposite side. You kind of mentioned the top group there with Drake May. What's a sleeper and underrated player that you think maybe is in the bottom of this class you think will have the best career at UNC?
Well, there's not very many underranked guys in this class. JJ Jones is a kid that we have as a 4-star at 24/7 Sports. He's a composite 3. Mm-hmm. He goes out as a senior, 52 catches for 1,017 yards and 13 touchdowns. Excuse me. So he is a guy that I think is going to be uber productive, and obviously he's going to have some talented players that throw him the football. Bryson Nesbitt's another who we have as a 4-star. Who is he a composite 3? No, he's a composite 4 also, but 6'6", 235 pounds, comes from outstanding lineage with his dad having a long NFL career. And did his mom play soccer in college?
Who was that?
Nesbitt,
yeah. His mom played soccer for South Carolina.
You're not paying attention, Don?
So for all we know, maybe she was the best athlete of the two, and you can't go, there are not many pro options that are very lucrative on that side. So, so anyway, he comes from great genes, cloth, what have you. And he's a guy that I think his team was kind of terrible. Were they terrible, Don? Correct me again.
Terrible is a tough word to throw in, but yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue with that too much.
Well, he's got a bright future, and I think at North Carolina, he's really going to come into his own. There's a ton of trait there.
I have 2 guys I want to ask you about. North Carolina did a really good job in the prior class on the defensive line, and they brought in 2 more blue chip guys, 4-star defensive lineman, Javari Ritzy, and then a 5-star guy, Keyshawn Silver. We haven't asked a whole lot of, because you came on a couple of times and we've talked about Ra and a couple of other guys. We talked about Drake a bunch, but I haven't asked you a lot about Keyshawn Silver. I'm really interested to kind of get your take on him and Ritzy.
Well, so you asked me who I thought would be the best college player and best pro, and I went with Drake May. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't like an easy decision, even though I answered the question so quickly. Because Keyshawn Silver and Javari Ritzy are 2 guys that are also first-round potential type players. Keyshawn Silver, especially, they were talking about a young man that's 6'6", 275 pounds with massive hands, massive feet. Who knows how big this young man's going to be, and he can play on the edge. He can play on the interior. I could see him having a similar impact to what Brian Brzez's having at Clemson. Now, the thing about Brian Brzez that made him so special, in addition to his physical traits, that nobody loves playing football more than Brian Brzez. Like at the All-America Bowl, I know this isn't a Clemson show, but I'll get to the punchline in a second. But Brian Brzez would have practiced 3 times a day at the All-America Bowl, if that's how many practices there were. He just loves playing football. Where some of those guys down there, it's a vacation, it's an honor to be there. This is get my Adidas gear and hang with these guys and have a good time and play bids and whatnot. The highlight for Brzez is playing football. If Keyshawn Silver has that kind of mentality and that motor, Brian Brzez's motor is off the charts. If Keyshawn Silver brings that kind of motor, he's got unlimited potential with his size and athleticism. He can be one of the scariest players in college football. And then Javari Ritzy is just that profile guy. 6'5", 274, again, can play on the edge, play on the interior, terrific shot put guy, and so he's explosive and powerful. His mom, I think, was a track athlete in college and is actually his track coach. So comes from a very competitive family. So those are 2 guys that I expect to to be difference makers. And we talk about the talented class that North Carolina signed on the defensive front last year, and I love those guys, but these two guys may be better, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Miles Murphy is playing a lot already. Clyde Pinder's playing a lot already. Des Evans has flashed a lot this season. What is it? Bingley Jones, Kedrick Bingley Jones was injured, so he's not even
The
playing.
returns on him, they knew he was going to be a stud as soon as
Mm-hmm.
he got to campus. Like, you talk to people around the program, the way he looked physically when he showed up, I think was pretty jaw-dropping. And again, all those young guys had to play, man. They just weren't very talented. What they inherited wasn't very talented.
Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, Kedrick Bingley Jones had a pretty bad injury in the spring, so they'll get him back next spring. So they're really stacking up on the defense line with some elite players. So that's definitely good to see for UNC fans. That kind of leads to my next question. Where do you think UNC really got better in this class? They obviously got the quarterback they wanted, and we've already spoken on that. But what position group or what side of the ball do you think you can really point to that UNC improved and enhanced their roster in the 2021 class?
Well, again, I think it was across the board. I think there's a standard now at North Carolina that they're going to play championship level football, and the culture's in place. But culture can still really only get you so far. You got to have some Jimmies and Joes that can do some things. And last year's class and this year's class, they've elevated particularly. Offensive line's maybe the one place where I'm skeptical.
Yeah,
because I think that they've added speed and physicality on all three levels on defense, and I think that they've landed guys that can score on one touch on offense. They've landed franchise caliber signal callers, and I think that they've landed wideouts that can be a real problem. So if you're looking for a question mark with this program that's going to be the Achilles heel, and offensive line is such a developmental position, jury's still out, but there's not a ton of no-brainers. So we'll see, about player development at that position. But, Phil Longo, they can hang a big number on the scoreboard. So I'm confident that he's already shown he can hang a big number. I'm confident that the offensive line will at the least maintain status quo.
Yeah. I always thought UNC needs to kind of beef up this offensive line. They unfortunately are not graduating anybody, so there's not a lot of guys they can bring in this class. They have two that are signed in Eli Sutton and Don's boy there, Diego Pounds. But I just think the talent, they need elite on the offensive line.
Don, that was a fun one to cover behind the scenes. Diego Pounds, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a crazy one. How it just switched like that,
I really love the way you actually wrote the commitment story too, because there were actually people on Inside Carolina that didn't believe the Penn State stuff, that we were like building this thing up.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to be right away.
Oh yeah.
We don't want any curveballs. We don't want to lead you astray. And the kid was going to Penn State. North Carolina flipped it. And kudos. That was spatula season a couple months ago, because he was a silent commit to Penn State. North Carolina flipped it.
What did Don do in that story that impressed you? It sounds like you're Don's PR guy right now.
Don wrote it. Don wrote it as such. If he would have wrote just a standard Diego Pounds committed to North Carolina XYZY, then people could have still thought we had him the whole time, but they didn't.
Ross, you taking notes?
Yeah, my recruiting covering recruiting days are far in my rearview mirror. I'll let that to you guys. You up, Don, with another question?
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of buzz surrounding the program within the state, and that's proven by just how well they did in state with this class. Next class, the in-state crop won't be nearly as good. So UNC is going to have to go out of state to fulfill some needs. But generally speaking, though, you're obviously not, you don't live in the state. You don't live anywhere near the state, really. What's the buzz that you're hearing as far as, or what's the perception of North Carolina from recruits outside of North Carolina?
Well, I can get a direct from Indianapolis to Charlotte and be there in a quick minute.
We got to get Steve up to the man tower, Don.
That's right.
I think recruiting is such a relationship-driven deal, and obviously you see North Carolina, what they've been able to do in state. They, those relationships have paid off. But they've shown they can go into the 757 and have success, and that's going to be a place. When you get Tony Grimes in the fold, you also get his dad, and his dad's plugged into so many prospects in that area, and that's already on the verge of paying off in 2022. But North Carolina is also a stock up program. Like literally, they can just show you results on the field. And I think they're going to eventually be able to show you NFL draft results under the staff. And so that speaks when you have to go out of region. And North Carolina hasn't had to do that yet. But Mac Brown's a powerful name. They got results on the field. And this staff has proven that they enjoy building relationships and they enjoy recruiting. And these guys have staff members that do have inroads in other places from past jobs, that when they do have to maybe pivot in another cycle to more out of region guys, they'll be able to do it seamlessly.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, both quarterbacks have been from the Charlotte area. So it was just natural they landed Sam Howell and Drake May. So when they're going to have to start getting quarterbacks from outside the state, which looks like it's going to be the case.
They've already proven that. They got Jacoby Criswell, and then they hung on to him. And Sam Howell and Drake May were flips. Those guys were headed to Florida State and Alabama respectively, and so that was just that stuff translates anywhere you're going as long as they're your top targets. Sure, it's easier to get local guys to your campus and stuff, but North Carolina could be on the verge of being a national level college football program. We'll see what they do next year, but I love the way it's trending.
All right, so to build off that, Steve, I mean, what has to happen to get into the top 10? I mean, what do you think has to really change in terms of, is it just winning, consistent winning, or when are we going to see UNC getting, top 10 classes back to back to back? Is that going to happen? Is that possible?
Well, they're kind of recruiting in that sweet spot that Clemson was recruiting when they built their program up, where they've landed some touted guys. But you also have to hit big on your less touted guys that you didn't beat out the Alabamas of the world for. They have to be hits for you that are, guys that can be difference makers against the Clemsons of the world. And so that's kind of where North Carolina's program is at right now. If they can win an ACC title or something, that puts you in a different breath, right? But right now their program is going to be built on landing some elite guys, but at the same time, landing guys that maybe you beat, a handful of other Power 5 schools for, but it wasn't the quote unquote, contenders. But those are guys that can help you beat those contenders. You got to be right there as well. And so that's the window. That's where North Carolina's at right now. So we'll see if they can elevate some of those guys that are on the back end of their class. But most of their class was ranked high this cycle. And they got to go out on the field and win an ACC title. But, I like the way they're chipping away at it.
All right, Steve, we're going to kind of get you out on this one. I want you to take a look at the UNC's 2021 signing class. And obviously, we've talked about a bunch of the big names, Drake May, Javari Ritzy, Keyshawn Silver. But if you look kind of throughout the class and names that aren't as big that we haven't talked about, maybe you haven't seen in a while, but you've seen some of their tape, you've seen some of their you've evaluated some of them. What names jump out to you that fans should be ready for, fans should get to know that maybe just aren't the big names we're used to?
So here's another young man, and this is going to make me go look at something.
Yeah, to take your time here.
Caleb Hood is another guy that we have as a 4-star that the industry doesn't. So to go back, to pivot to your last question, what does North Carolina have to do to get top 10 classes? If you take out the composite and you just look at our rankings, they're number 9. So what a funny world we live in, Don, where last year we couldn't do anything right with our rankings on Inside Carolina.
You guys are slating against North Carolina. You have this vendetta against UNC. So how can this be correct that you have North Carolina higher than ESPN and rivals?
Well, we have them 9 this cycle, and I just want the love when it's deserved, when the hate is – I'm good with the hate too. Y'all are passionate, but bring us the love when we got you at number 9. And Caleb Hood is another one that, this kid's just a great football player, and he's a tremendous athlete, and his dad comes from good pedigree, like several other people in this class. And I just don't see how Caleb Hood is not a major impact player during his time at North Carolina. He's physically going to be ready to go when he gets on campus. He's going to be one of the most athletic players on the team when he gets on campus. I think he's a high IQ kid as well. He's made plays under center on the high school level. I'm excited to see where North Carolina puts him and see what he does.
And Don, you think he's going to be a running back, right?
Yeah, and we actually, it's great timing for this, for Steve's answer, because we ran a story on him, in-depth background on his commitment and his father training him through basically from the age of 3 on the website. So if you haven't read that story, you're listening to this, make sure you check that out to get a little bit more in depth on Caleb Hood. So yeah, no, I definitely agree. He's a running back through and through.
Your guys' rivalry with NC State could get fun because they got a pretty fun team coming back next year too, and they have a sleeper good recruiting class. So I know y'all, I think you guys served them up pretty good this year. So I know on your guys' end, you guys want to keep that rolling, but they kind of bounced back this year and have a good class coming in too. So looking forward to maybe this North Carolina NC State rivalry being must-see TV when typically. Well, do they play on rival? I don't even know what week they play. Is it typically on rivalry week also? It's so buried.
Typically, but not this year. But the thing too is that the in-state guys, in-state recruits this year were so good that UNC could dominate like they did, and there were just so many leftovers for NC State. I know this is going to sound like a shot at NC State, but it's the absolute truth. I mean, NC State got some guys that UNC just didn't have room for. They were like legit dudes.
No doubt. Well, I'm just looking for it. That game could be 2 top 25 teams towing the white line next year and be one that I actually know what time it starts and plays on Saturday, when you're also got the Iron Bowl and Michigan, Ohio State and Notre Dame and USC and some of them other games that are typically played on that weekend.
Yeah, I think NC State had a very surprising season this year based on where they're expected to finish. And I think UNC fans want to keep Dave Doran in Raleigh as long as possible. He's kind of becoming pretty mediocre with some ups and some downs. So we'll see.
Dude, they've only had 1 10-win season in their whole history of football. So it's not like, I mean, like you say, mediocre. Like Dave Doran's actually been pretty damn good based on past.
Yeah, they had 2 9-win seasons back when they had that sick defensive line 3 or 4 years ago. All right, Steve, we appreciate your time. That was great. Enjoy the rest of National Signing Day. Don, any parting words for Steve?
No, I just always appreciate Steve coming on here. We got to have him on more frequently this coming cycle.
You guys are the best, and I'm so glad that I got to put a blazer over a hoodie. That's
right.
That's a very underrated look.
Yeah, we're looking stylish today.
All right, good stuff. We appreciate it, Steve. We'll be right back with more on the Scoop podcast.
Take care, y'all.
And now we bring on Barton Simmons, the director of scouting for 24/7 Sports, to join us, talk about the 2021 UNC signing class. What's going on, Barton?
What's up, guys? How are you? Signing day plopped right here in the middle of basically the regular season. Kind of hectic, but we're good, man. How are y'all?
I'm great. Good stuff.
I'm always good when I'm on the road on the call with Ross.
That's right.
Ross is the highlight of my week.
Ross the legends. Ross's shout out by Mac on the Zoom calls just gives me so much enjoyment.
Yeah, and I mean, a little background here. I mean, Barton and I used to work together in the office, so I know Barton decently well from, I guess, 2 or 3 years in headquarters. I'm assuming y'all aren't going in on anymore, are y'all?
I haven't been in the office since February, I think.
Wow. Is anyone going in?
Pate goes in a little bit to record things from time to time. We're actually moving downtown. Office headquarters are moving downtown Nashville. So next time you visit, you'll be able to stumble right out the front door and onto Broadway if you want to.
Yeah, Barton's a Nashville legend too. Grew up in Nashville. When I was working there, I would love National Signing Day because we have a huge buffet. We have Andy cooking pancakes. We have breakfast brought in, lunch, dinner, champagne. It was awesome. And I would go back even when I moved to Chapel
Ross
Hill.
loves free food. So if it's free, it's for Ross.
I think
doesn't
they
matter
know
what
that.
it was.
I think they know that there too. All right, let's get into it here. We have a couple questions here for Barton. First of all, I mean, Barton does the rankings, a lot of the rankings for the prospects for 24/7 Sports, him and his team. I just wanted to ask kind of that process, and now that we're at the culmination of this class, or I guess February is actually the culmination. Can you kind of go into that process for you and your team and ranking each prospect in these classes at 24/7 Sports?
Yeah, I mean that's a loaded question. It's sort of, I'm not sure which way to attack it. It is obviously a very in-depth process, I mean, we're literally ranking thousands of kids, like 1 through thousands. And so it is, there's a lot of, there's a fan perspective where you see your commits and, oh, this guy moved down and this guy moved up. And it's very narrow in terms of the way you look at it. And not that it should be anything other than that, because that's what you're interested in. But obviously from our perspective, we've got a much broader view, and we've got so many prospects to try to pull from. And I get a lot. Part of my job is just sort of be the whipping boy on rankings day. And look, I'm sort of the face of the rankings, and I get a lot of heat, and I understand it. And that's no complaints. It is what it is. But it's not my rankings. I chair the committee in which a lot of different opinions are bandied about. We try to gather as much feedback as we can from our network. We try to make our rankings as informed as possible, using every resource at our disposal. And that includes colleges, that includes our network, that includes in-person evaluations, everything else. So again, we could have a whole podcast on the rankings process, but it's thankless, but it's also very enjoyable. So I got no complaints.
How many times are you going in and re-ranking kids from, you start when they're like freshmen, sophomores, I imagine, in high school, right?
Yeah. We have the first ranking of a class as a top 100 heading into their sophomore season. And then that class will be pushed out to a top 247 following their sophomore years. And then from there on, we rank, I guess, a couple more times over the course of that sort of pre-junior year cycle. And then as juniors, as they come into the spotlight, we rank them almost monthly, is sort of what we've turned to in our process. We update either the senior, juniors, or sophomore class every month. Every month there's a new top 247 rankings release. And so, again, there's a lot that goes into those. There's a lot of, there is a lot of information that we're trying to wrangle and inject into the rankings. There's a lot of evaluations. We're not going to see everybody, and we're going to see some guys more than others. And there's a lot of understood, just sort of subconscious bias that might be in there just based on who we've seen, who we haven't seen, and things of that nature. But I think the end product is something I'm very proud of, because I grade it every year. We project it to the NFL draft. A 5-star is a guy we project as first round pick. A 4-star is a guy we project as a draft pick. And every year I grade out each of our rankings versus rivals versus ESPN and compare it to the NFL draft and figure out who was the most accurate. And we've been the most accurate every year I've done it. And so that's something I'm proud of. And I know that it's a little footnote that no one else but me probably cares about, but it's something but it is ultimately our goal. Our goal is to be accurate. And we're going to continue to try to get more accurate.
Yeah. So when you rank the 32 top players in the incoming 2021 class, that's what you're projecting to be the 32 first-round picks, I guess, based on ability, because you can't project need in the NFL, but that's kind of how you look at it. Awesome. One more thing. I think we should have Barton on maybe mid-year for like a whole podcast about ranking and scouting, because that's really interesting. We don't have too much time for that. But what's the hardest thing about your job? What's the challenges of, whether it be the ranking part, the scouting part, or dealing with the DMs and the calls on Twitter? What do you find the hardest part of your job?
I think dealing
with Trey Scott.
I think honestly, it's just trying to because ultimately, it's impossible for us to put together an honest product where we are moving guys around. I think the hardest part is the battle of trying to be accurate in our rankings, and the accuracy and the attempt and the sort of striving for that accuracy, and the inevitability of like the bitterness that's going to cause. Because like if it was up to me, we would not, if we didn't care about just sort of informing the users, but all we cared about was accuracy, then I wouldn't release a ranking until January after their senior seasons, right? But the process to get there is what really sort of pisses people off, and the need to drop a guy from a 4-star to a 3-star because we want to be accurate while still acknowledging the guy's still a good player. Like those sort of things, being forced to on a message board to tell a fan base what I don't like about a guy who is ranked 50th in the country. Like that, those sort of questions are just like, well, I mean, he's one of the best players in America, but you moved him down from 30 to 50. Yeah, you're right. I did, but he's still the 50th best player in America. Like those sort of binds that we are sort of forced to get ourselves into based just on the process of ranking players is frustrating. And it's rankings days typically aren't that fun because people are just, posting memes about me or whatever, but it is what it is. And it's, we'll take the good with the bad.
Yeah. It's like people that complain and do all that stuff, they also pay our bills. So it's kind of like the hardcore fans that care are the ones, the reason why we're doing this and the reason why we have these crazy message boards and crazy recruiting followings. Don?
True. We appreciate them.
That's right.
Before we get to UNC's actual class, I did have one more question about the rankings. This year was unique, to say the least, for you. What were some of the challenges kind of working, things that were, I guess, taken away from you as far as abilities to rank certain guys? What were, I guess, some of the most difficult things to overcome?
Well, I anticipate this being our least accurate rankings we've ever had. Okay. I mean, and that's just honest because we've had less opportunity. We've had less access to the critical tools we need to evaluate. Now, I'll say this. I think in the early going, when there was no camps and no combines and we weren't on the road and the typical process was disrupted for us, this is back in the spring, right? I think coming out of that spring, we might have had our most accurate rankings in that relative to other rankings we've had released in that time period, because it forced us to dig back in on junior film in a more comprehensive way than we ever really had time to, frankly, before. So there's a give and a take. If you're on the road, you might be discovering some more guys. You might be adding context to players, and being able to unearth some players that you wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity to when you're sitting at home. But again, the time and energy we put into digging into junior tape probably served us well in a way that is we've had difficult, we just don't have, there's only so many man hours in the day. But to go basically a full calendar year now without really any extensive in-person evaluations. Now, we've had some guys on the road and they've seen some games this fall, and those have been helpful, certainly. And there's even some camps across the spring and summer. So I'm not acting like we haven't seen anybody, but to the level we typically do. And now you've got, look at North Carolina, like we have no senior tape on these guys, in California, maybe they play in the spring. We'll see how that even goes, but there's just the lack of in-person evaluations, the lack of information, the information deficit we're working with. And even we really lean a lot on information that we're getting from college coaches, and the information they're getting that is advantageous to us is seeing them in camp, testing them, running 40s, getting their height and weight. All that stuff that's just a whole funnel of information that we don't have access to. And so there are definitely challenges in this cycle. And it's we're going to do the best we can. And I still think we'll put out a good product, but there's no question. I mean, we'd rather it to be the other way, where we can feel even more informed.
Sticking to the difficulty theme, when you look at North Carolina's 18 signees, who was, I guess, the one guy that was the most difficult to evaluate and rank?
I would say probably Ra Dilworth.
Okay.
Because I think guys like him, like there was frame question marks there. And there's athleticism, which is not a question at all. And I think anytime you've got a player like that, like there's a really wide range of possibilities, I think, with him. Like he could be a first round draft pick. It wouldn't shock me. If his body develops in the right way, if he puts on some good weight, if he keeps his athleticism, like there's all kinds of ways in which this guy could be like a freak show on the next level. But I think there's also a way where that could go, where it's like, well, he's just, I mean, I know there's other schools that are just very concerned about his size, just purely the frame and the limitations that might be on it. And so there is the other way, right? There is the way where it's just, I don't know, he's sort of like a tweener and the body type never quite gets where it's supposed to be. And so I think because of that, it is a little hard. Like we could have him way too high or we could have him way too low. And it's just sort of a matter of perspective in terms of what you like and what you're looking for and what you think you can do. But a lot of it is just about how he's going to project and develop over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so Rod Dilworth at 6'2", 193. Don, is he really 6'2"?
Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
he came to he actually went to a bunch of camps this fall. And I think that I updated his height and weight in the 24/7 Sports database. So whatever that has is the most accurate.
So what position is he, do you think, Barton? I mean, I think with Jay Bateman at UNC, they can move him around so much. But I mean, when you project him to maybe his NFL position, where do you see him kind of being the best fit?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he has an aptitude for linebacker. He seems well equipped to play that position from a mentality standpoint, and certainly kind of that space linebacker position, sort of a hybrid role, it would be ideal for him. But I do think that when we were debating and discussing him in our rankings, and again, this was really conversations that we had a while back, because we haven't really been we hadn't talked about him recently. But the plus is that, look, if he can't do linebacker, he's still plenty athletic enough to be a safety, to be like a true safety. Like there's safety prospects that would love that athleticism. And so we're kind of okay. We got a couple bullets to fire here. Even if he isn't like as experienced playing a true safety role, there's reason to believe that he could get there and that's within his capabilities. So I think that's what I like about him. But no, I think ideally he continues to develop, and he is just a super freakazoid linebacker.
Great. Okay, so looking at this class, UNC's 2021 class right now ranked number 13 in the nation. It keeps moving up and down. We're recording this a little bit early, a little inside baseball for the podcast listeners out there. Which prospect do you think will be the best college player? I mean, it kind of goes along with this. We'll have maybe the best NFL career when you look at this whole class.
Okay. I think I guess the answer to both of those questions could be the same guy, right?
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, the guy that I think has the highest ceiling in this class is Keyshawn Silver. And by the way, as I'm talking, you guys let me know if you agree or disagree. I want to hear if you all have different opinions.
I'm a huge Keyshawn Silver fan, and I have been for a long time, just because of his size and his athleticism. I've seen him move in person. He moves really well. He reminds me like mentality and personality wise. He reminds me a little bit of Eric Ebron, which obviously is a completely different position, but just a little bit of immaturity, I guess, but not in a bad way. Just a little goofy, little
got a little dog in him. Got a little dog in him, right?
No, I'm not. I mean, Eric Ebron was what, top 10 pick, you know?
That's what I'm saying, like he's got a little mentality of like a, that good mentality. You worry sometimes if he takes it serious. Not like he's going to be slacking off and eating during practice, but definitely a goofiness, definitely will play around sort of thing. You can see it on Twitter. But I mean, as far as like the tools, I mean, he has as much tools as any guy coming out of North Carolina that I can recall.
I think he plays a position where that critique doesn't worry me as much.
Yes.
You know, like, hey, look, all you got to do is just, hey, know what your stunts your games are. You're on the line of scrimmage, pin your ears back and get the quarterback, or just just punch what's in front of you. I mean, I know that simplifies things a little bit too much, but it is. I think that's a guy that is. And look, I say this a lot, and I think this is for me an important tool in what how you like other athletic settings that you can see these guys in, especially rather than just straight up highlight film. The thing that sells me on Keyshawn Silver is his basketball clips.
Yeah,
the explosiveness, the suddenness, the twitch, the just like quick leapability. That stuff is off the charts for a guy that big, and I feel like it's. I feel like he's scratching the surface. Like I think there's a long way to go for him, and so maybe there's a lower floor on him than some other guys in this class, but he certainly has, to me, the highest ceiling and the guy that can make a lot of money if he channels things the right way.
Yeah, and he's a guy who really would have benefited from a senior season. You just need another season of playing.
There's a couple guys in this class like that. Honestly, it's kind of disappointing. I mean, I thought about that too with the Nesbitt kid at tight ends.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a guy that could have used a senior season.
Yeah,
But yeah.
So going to the opposite question, who do you, when you're looking at this class, who do you think are the sleepers or sleeper in this from North Carolina's signees?
We're kind of that with someone like kind of below the ranking of like 278, which will put you below kind of Nesbitt and Nash.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the commit list, which is using the composite ratings.
Yeah.
And the guy that I think is potentially a monster.
I think I know who you're going to talk about.
Is the second lowest rated commit according to the composite, which is Caleb Hood.
Yeah.
I am very disappointed that we don't have senior film to watch with him because he is, first of all, he has tested like a monster. Like he's got the verified numbers that point to the athleticism. Secondly, if you just look at it on film and look at the way he's put together, he is an impressive dude. And again, another sort of thing that I really value when looking at these high school players, it's great if you can go out there and you look sharp in the old ladder drill. If you play 7-on-7 every weekend and you're really good at your wide receiver position and all that, that's great. But I love it in high school when a guy is just a better athlete in whatever he's doing than everyone else. And that's what it feels like with Caleb Hood. He plays quarterback. He's quarterback film's not bad. And just the things he can do athletically, and he's used to hold the ball in his hands. He's used to being in the spotlight. I think that dude could be really, really good.
Well, I wonder how much of his rankings were affected by the fact that all of his film basically is of him at quarterback, and especially the fact that prior to his commitment, he wanted to, or the perception was he was going to play quarterback. I mean, do you think that hindered him at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I don't even really remember sort of what the process was in the evolution of the way we looked at him, because I feel like he may have been lumped in there with the quarterbacks in the first sort of comb through of the rankings. And then as we got as we sort of shifted the way we looked at him as sort of not a quarterback, but just an athlete, I think that's when we bumped him to a 4-star. And frankly, I don't know if we bumped him high enough, and we'll have an opportunity to sort of deliberate on that and see what kind of moves we feel comfortable making with guys that didn't play senior seasons. But I do think that's a guy that you could certainly make a case is based on just the tools, the athletic traits, and those sort of things that he could be worth taking another look at.
So what position for Hood? Do we say running back? That's what I mean. The funny thing is that we had Wiltfong on. He said Hood is a sleeper as well. So what position?
I mean, what are they saying? What's North Carolina saying? Do you know?
I mean, they absolutely love him, especially as a running back.
At running back? Is that
yeah. He's coming in as a running back.
Okay.
And that was kind of a decision they allowed him to make, but that was, especially, I just saw him a couple weeks ago at a camp. I mean, he looks like a running back. I mean, he looks like a college running back right now. Just the good weight that he's put on. You go look on his Twitter, and it's all these clips of him lifting and maxing out and all that. And so he's definitely been taking advantage of the extra free time to bulk up and add some good weight. So I saw
he's listed as 6'1", 231 right now. Did you put that in? Is that
yeah,
new?
that came from a combine.
Thick.
Yeah,
That's
and then he ran
thick.
a 4.5 electric time 40.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's scary right there. I mean, obviously that's a dream linebacker right there too, if he wants to do that. But at running back, that's pretty strong as well.
Funny thing is, Don is like 6 foot, like 240, but it's not all good weight. All right, let's move on here. All right, quarterbacks, Barton. Obviously, they're signing Drake May. We have him ranked. Let's see here. It's 57 high, 6'5", 210. That high 4-star area. Could you compare him to what they have in the quarterback room right now with Jacoby Criswell, who came in last year, and of course Sam Howell, because they'll overlap by 1 year. And so, what are they getting in Drake May, and how would you compare him to Criswell and Howell?
I think Criswell is like a little. I think Howell is more of a imposing sort of. What's the best way to phrase this? Like he has more horsepower, like just like a power pitcher, kind of like a big kid who's got some athleticism that can hit everywhere on the field. Criswell, like one of the things that struck me about Criswell, and I don't know if this has translated or reflected. Has been reflective of what he's been like in college, but he struck me as a guy with a really nice personality about him and some leadership qualities, some intangibles. He is a little bit less toolsy, for lack of a better phrase, than Drake May, but is athletic when he's healthy, is accurate from what I could tell and seeing him in person last cycle. And I feel like it feels like a guy that could sort of be kind of a tough guy to beat out. I guess like I could see him being someone that is a little bit pesky, even for a guy as highly touted as Drake May to come in and just try to just knock him off. That said, I mean, Drake May was another one that would have been nice to see this year. I mean, he had like 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions as a junior. He's very accurate. I know he had a really loaded wide receiver group to throw to. And so sometimes it's a little bit hard those guys were making plays for him. But I think that can be viewed as a negative, but it can also be viewed as a positive. Like one of the reasons I like Joe Burrow's ability to translate into the NFL was because he was making NFL throws to NFL receivers in college, and he understands what those windows look like, what those guys can do. I think the same thing could be said for a guy like Drake May, who comes from the high school game that's used to being like, all right, well, I know I don't have to put it in a perfect spot, like out in front of the receiver. I know what a back shoulder fade looks like. I know what throwing him open looks like because these guys can make plays for me. And so I think some of that can serve him well on the next level as well. But look, he's big, he's athletic, he's strong-armed, he's everything you want in a quarterback when you draw him up. And I think he's got a really high ceiling to be an NFL guy.
Yeah, and that kind of covered my next question, but like comparing Howell and Drake at the same age, like coming out of high school, was Howell better than Drake, you think? I mean, Howell was ready to go and had a great freshman year. I'm just wondering if Drake's going to be at that same level.
I'll be honest. I liked Howell's film better than I liked Drake May's film. But I don't know that I would. I think I'd be lying if I said I thought Howell had that I'd be confident Howell would be a better player than Drake, because Howell, like the thing we had to figure out with Howell was, he's a little bit kind of looks like he's a, 5th-year senior frat quarterback, a little bit body type wise coming out of high school. You know what I mean? Like he he's not, and he looks
like he can slam him down.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's while he is athletic and made plays with his feet on film as a high schooler, he never really tested that well, and he didn't play great competition. And so like, it was a little bit hard to gauge how all that stuff was going to translate at the next level. And so but he had just some it factor to the weight and the playmaking ability that he brought to the table that, obviously has translated really well to the college game. And Drake, to me, strikes me as a little more of just he's more of a sum of his parts than sort of this like guy you just throw out there and just think he's going to find a way to win, like that Sam Howell quality. I just think they're different in that way. I mean, and that doesn't mean Drake doesn't come in and be the number one overall pick, because I think that's within the realm of possibility for him. I think it's just that they're a different, they're unique. They're an interesting, contrast because of just those different stylistic approaches they have.
I love your analogies, Barton, because you can relate to the bro in the room,
So we've talked about.
Go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Ross. Go ahead.
I was saying, you make great analogies on your own podcast, Cover 3. So I'm glad you're bringing similar heat to this podcast.
Appreciate
I'm glad.
it. Yeah.
I'm glad the A game is here from Barton. I was worried, different time, all that sort of stuff. So we've mentioned a bunch of different guys. We've mentioned Rob mentioned Keyshawn, Drake May. Other than those guys, who else just jumps out at you and you feel like we need to talk about?
I think I would say there's two or three other guys that I think are just sort of catch my eye. Jahvaree Ritzie to me was a huge get. And I'll be honest with you, the very first time I watched Jahvaree Ritzie's film, I didn't quite know what to make of it, because it was very much just him sort of running in a straight line, sometimes unblocked, and just tackling someone in the backfield. And I didn't, it lacked some nuance for me to figure out exactly what it was. But the more you dig into him, his body type, his athletic profile, and then you sort of reassess the film with some added context. I think he's sort of what you want defensive linemen to look like right now. He could play defensive end if you need him to. More than likely, this is a guy that continues to mature and develop into an interior guy. And he brings all that previous athleticism with him into that role. And he's naturally powerful. He's a really good shot put guy, which I think is an indicator of some strong innate power. And I just think, again, I think that he is what you want defensive linemen to look like. If I'm running a recruiting office, I'm looking for 275-pound, athletic, thick dudes that will eventually be 315-pound, athletic, thicker dudes. And I think that's who that guy is.
Is there
and so there's a couple others. So I'll mention the other ones that just sort of caught my eye. I think another one is JJ Jones. That's a guy I actually, just before we jumped on here, he's got some senior film, and so I wanted to just make sure I sort of caught up on that a little bit. And I just sort of like what you got there. He's a big bodied guy. He's got 1,000 yards receiving this year on 20 yards a catch. Great ball skills, bunch of one-handed catches on his tape, but he can really, as a big guy, he can sink his hips and get in and out of his routes really effectively. And I think you see a lot of, for a bigger receiver, you see a lot of him, like he utilizes that size. Like he protects the football when it's in the air and attacks it with body control and ball skills that allow him to make difficult covered catches. And so I think that was a really good get. And then I think the other one that's a little bit of a lower rated guy, that is one that, again, we were anxious to see as a senior, and is Diego Pounds. I'm sure that's probably another one y'all aren't surprised to hear me say. I think he's a really good player. He's an 89 rated guy for us. Not that I think that's, dramatically off, but you could certainly make a case he's a 4-star. And I just think he's the body type, the athleticism, the punch. These things are all there for him. And so that's another one that, again, he would have had we would have taken a close look at him with some senior tape.
Yeah. He definitely had some questions that, even UNC, they waited to offer him until they actually needed an offensive lineman. And it was because they wanted to see him in the spring, which they couldn't do. And then they wanted to see him in the summer, which they couldn't do. And then they wanted to see him in his senior season, which they couldn't do. So yeah, there's definitely some questions, and you aren't the only one.
Awesome. I think that's about it. So I'm gonna get you out here on one last question, Barton. A kind of off-topic question here.
Yeah, before I gotta warn you, all it says is Ross special question. So I have no idea what this is. I'm scared for you, Barton.
Is it related to backyard pickup basketball?
It might go there. I just want Barton's take on. We hung out almost 4 or 5 days a week for 2 years. I want your take on the first time you met me, our experiences. Could include. We used to play basketball at the CEO's house. It's probably my highlight from working 24/7 Sports. It's kind of before. I felt like it was before it was really big, like before the CBS acquisition. We used to go like, all right, afternoon's off, let's go play basketball, and we did that for a couple springs there. But what's your perspective on the Ross Martin experience for you in Nashville?
Well, I will let the listeners in on Ross's basketball game. He has got a super Euro basketball game. like so many, how did he get his footwork to do that? And bunch of hook shots and kind of just using his length. He's a tall guy, probably played a lot of church league center.
Yeah,
and
that's exactly right.
Yeah, and he is crafty. He is crafty around the lid. I'll give him credit for that. I think at my did we try to set you up with one of my at the time girlfriends? Maybe she's my wife at the time. One of her friends. Did we try to set you up at one point?
I'm not sure, man.
I don't think it went very far. The report I got back was that
I don't know if this was me though.
I want the report. I want to hear the report.
The report I got back was something like, "Oh, that he's one of those jokers. That's just a player. Like he's not interested in a serious relationship."
I actually do not remember that.
Well, it was short lived. It didn't get very far.
Yeah, what's funny is you were kind of started your relationship with your wife kind of during that time when I was there, because I think you got married right before I left almost.
Yeah, you missed a good run, man.
I know. I
was hanging up the cleats at that point, but it was a good little stretch before you got there.
Your Broadway nickname was like Cat. I was at a bar once, and they're like the freaking band guy was like, "Hey, Catfish," and I was like, "Who's he talking to?" And I look behind, it's Barton, because Barton's from Nashville, so all the bands and all the bartenders know him, so he had a reputation around the bars on.
Just put in daily deposits, hard work, night after night. Sometimes you get to know the right people.
Yeah, the games were awesome. I mean, it was pretty competitive because our CEO played in college. Barton's a college athlete. Clint Brewster, shout out, college athlete. And then you have some of the tech guys come play.
Those games sent me into retirement though, because I got a hard. Were you in the game when I got a hard foul and I got put on my back, and that was the beginning of the end for my back. And I don't play. I don't do much of anything anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there were some fights. You had remember Charlie would fight with Samir. The two nicest guys out there in the world were going nose to nose. It was so funny.
Right. Competition, baby.
That's right. All right. Good times. Barton, this is awesome. Hopefully our listeners enjoyed that. We're going to close the podcast now, guys. So thanks for listening. Don, any words?
No, I appreciate Barton coming on. And I do agree with what Ross said earlier. We need to have Barton on in a couple months once the dust settles, talk about some ranking stuff and the 22 class.
I'm happy to come on. Thanks for having me on. And I'm always very open and welcoming to shed a little light and transparency on our rankings process. The more, the better. I think the more people understand the different dilemmas of the process, the more they're willing to grant us a little bit of a leeway. So thanks for talking.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you.